Welcome in, everybody, to our new YouTube channel, Think Network. My name is Steven, and this is Kurt. We are going to be breaking down season 3 of The Mandalorian, episode 1. This is something that we wanted to do back in season 2 when it came out 2 years ago, and we're finally getting around to it now. So we are going to dive in here to episode 1. Kurt, how did this one end up starting out?
All right, so this episode was awesome. I mean, I I thoroughly love the opening setup that John Favreau created. It's unbelievable. They pan into the armor creating a cures for just a youngling. It kind of
Yep.
symbolizes that baptism. Kind of referencing Din Djarin and this new child that's coming in where he has to redeem himself with a bath with inside the mines of Mandalore, and it's definitely going to be an awesome season.
Yeah, so we end up opening up with her making the helmet for obviously the new Mandalorian that they are bringing in. One of the things I noticed, at least in the first scene, it was very interesting with like how many people we ended up seeing outside. Mandalore, at least from my knowledge, it used to be something that was very vast and a lot of people were a part of. So it was interesting to see that there might have been only 10 to 15 people there when usually back in the day it was probably a lot more. And I know as they were walking out, you did notice some things about their flags as well.
Oh yeah, the two flags. One symbolized the great mythosaur, which is common amongst the Mandalorians, but the flag to the left is actually representation of Vizsla, Clan Vizsla, which there's Paz, which is the generational line that came from his father and his grandfather, great father, which wielded the Darksaber, and he led the whole tribe. So there's
Yeah.
there's a big playback, and I'm guessing the child that they initiated is a part of Clan Vizsla because they carried
Yeah.
that clan flag as they were preceding the helmet.
Yeah. So this kid was getting his helmet. They were going through the whole ceremony. And then all of a sudden, this big sea monster comes out of nowhere and lands on the beach. They end up trying to take it down, and they were not having an easy time with it.
Yep,
They tried putting detonators on it. They
yep,
tried sticking, tried to shoot it down, and it had just ended up spinning and flicking them all off. So
yep.
it was interesting to see such like a big beast be able to handle so many Mandalorians so easily.
I know it had some callbacks to a lot of, I mean, everything that you see, fight wise with it. It's kind of like the mythosaurs, which you see in the skulls that they have on their armor, where they would hunt
Yeah.
them. They would go on mythosaur hunts, and they were all over Mandalore. But I think it was pretty cool to see them using all their equipment too. Like they used their grappling hooks, they used their flamethrowers, they used their blasters, they used their jetpacks. They used pretty much all of their equipment to fight this beast. And I think it has kind of it's cool to see an entire clan of people fighting. You know,
Yeah. Do they have a name for like the grenade they had, or was that just
yeah, like
like
the
a
detonators, just
standard?
like jetpacks, detonators. I don't
Okay.
know if they probably have more of an in depth name for what the actual equipment is, but yeah, the det packs that they were using, they're just det charges.
So pretty much they're getting their butts kicked, and
Yep.
then all of a sudden you see what kind of spaceship was it again, or what kind of ship was it, Kurt?
That's the N1 Naboost starfighter. Yeah, that thing's awesome. And it's
So he's
obviously
flying in.
modified.
Yeah, the thing, like you were saying, you were making a reference to the sounds that it was making as well. It
Oh yeah.
sounded awesome. It visually looked cool.
Yep.
You were wondering how they were going to get out of that situation,
Yep.
and of course, that's the introduction
Yep. And
of the
then pretty much
Mandalorian.
at this point, like Din Djarin he's kind of like a symbol of he's like kind of a symbol of the Mandalore. I mean, he wields the dark saber, right? But he
Yeah,
now is kind of thrust into this like chaotic sense that nobody wants him there, but he technically should be the Mandalore. He should be the one
yeah.
that leads the clan. But he ends up, he ends up being exiled, and they still even don't want his help when they're being attacked by this massive crocodile creature.
Funny part is too, he could easily, like, if he wanted to, since he had that sword, he could just get his own army. He could, but he wants to do things the right way.
Right.
He wants to get brought back in the correct way. So
Yeah.
he still kind of has those standards and morals that he's trying to follow, which they, for some reason, they're just sticking to their guns. They're gonna keep
There's
exile on them. So
there's a lot of potential for he becomes Mandalore if he redeems himself inside the mines of Mandalore. if he redeems himself, I mean, he can make the rules, especially since he becomes Mandalore. So I mean, if he wants to ditch
True.
the whole helmet thing, if he wants to, unite everybody, I mean, he will be Mandalore if he does redeem himself through this series. Which I know Favreau said this series has no end in sight. I mean, it's going to be a big.
So who knows?
Who
knows how many seasons?
Yeah, we don't really know, and I think there's going to be. I think there's going to be a lot of surprises. I think there's a lot of characters that are going to build story arcs and maybe even spin-offs. I'm sure they'll probably do all kinds of spin-offs just by leading into the stuff that we're seeing from Rebels and all these other series.
And just like what you were saying kind of leads into the next scene that we have with him having to go find those mines on Mandalore.
Yep.
I know we have the next scene that comes up. He ends up having a conversation with like the armor smith.
Yep.
And he ends up presenting what was it? It was a portion of script.
So yeah, it's a portion of script that was crystallized, most likely from when Mandalore was destroyed by the Empire.
Yeah, which pretty much just shows that someone was able to get down there and didn't die.
Yeah,
so it might be actual possible for him to redeem himself.
Yeah, and I believe it's Beskar, but it's engraved, I believe, in obviously their language. I just read recently they decoded that. They decoded that shield or the crystal that had the writing on it, and they said that it actually is a reference out of Exodus in the Bible, and because they're kind of having religious, they're having religious callbacks. Like I mean, it's the whole beginning of this was a baptism. I mean, there's a lot of callbacks to that stuff, but it's pretty interesting that fans were able to even decipher that right off the bat.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So we end up pretty much out of that one. He ends up saying that she does say that he would be allowed to do that to get his honor back in a way. So he now has to. Well, it seems like he feels like he has to create a team to go down to Mandalore. He knows he's not going to be able to do it by himself.
Yep.
So where does he end up going? He ends up going to. Where was it again?
So I believe after they're inside the cave with the armor, and she's kind of discussing that it is very possible. I mean, I'm sure that they're trepidatious about it because it's poisonous. Nobody can get to the planet, so he's pretty much just cast out, right? So he's got to find a way to get down there, and I think his next move was to go to Navarro and see if he can piece together some group. I mean, it's gonna be a droid because he needs to get. Which
hold on the way to. Remember, they on the way to Mando ended up sleeping, and we had Grogu who ended up seeing.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Correct. Yeah,
they said the Purgle. They saw the Purgle from Rebels, right? Yeah. Which you could see it when they're in hyperspace. You can actually physically see the Purgle inside of hyperspace, which everybody. I mean, if you're not super into the lore, everybody knows that from Rebels. Ezra Bridger, he was actually able with the Force to talk to these creatures, and that's like a big lead in, which they want to lead into it with Ahsoka, probably looking for Grand Admiral Thrawn. There's a lot going on with that, especially having that little Easter egg there. It's definitely gonna breach out into the other stories that are gonna be told, not even just in the Mandalorian.
Definitely a little tease into what possibly we could still see in this season. Just like with Boba Fett, where we saw a lot of Mandalorian in the end of that season. Could be the same thing here, where going into the Ahsoka series, we actually see a lot of Ahsoka and Ezra as well. So it'll be interesting to see. I feel like Filoni likes to leave those little kind of things in there as like a cue to what might be happening later in the season. So it'll be interesting to see, where they go from there with like a little hint like that. But like you were talking about, I know as we were watching it together, the next city the next planet they do end up going to, it does look a lot different than what it used to. It looks like a lot more rich. And I know you were seeing a bunch of different callbacks first little section there too. Yeah,
I believe Favreau, even in an interview, he said that this is like 2 years inside the making of Baby Yoda being gone from Din Djarin and then coming back. So a lot has happened since the Empire that had its little I don't know what you'd call them, like vacuums of Imperial stormtroopers and commanders that held little outposts as the Empire collapsed. I mean, Navarro was just like it's an outer rim style planet, which are very hard to
Yeah.
tame. And this was along the way. I mean, it's pretty interesting to see how big of a facelift Navarro got just from that time period. I mean, it was like only a couple of years, him coming back, and everything completely changes. I mean, you can even see
Looks totally different.
it totally different. Almost even looks like they're terraforming it, almost like it's becoming green. It's not so much like a lava rock planet. It's awesome that they were able to change that, and you see the progression of planets actually becoming regentrified.
Yeah, with like, them being regentrified without the Empire's watch or anything like
Right.
that, they would be able to do that. They would be able to succeed. And
Yeah.
I don't know. It was just really cool to see even just the set in general with that. The city looked amazing, all the different animals that they had as well that they included.
Oh yeah.
It was definitely cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, there was a few just off the top of your head you could see in the background, which was, I mean, R5. Everybody knows R5 from the original trilogy. I mean, he blows a servo. I mean, it makes way for R2D2. I mean, there's even the EV droid, which was, the one that tortured the Gonk droids inside Sandcrawler and in Jabba's palace, and it was nice to see that. I mean, even seeing how Navarro's become almost like not ritzy, but more upper class. It's more upper class. You have ebony droids walking around, protocol droids walking around, which they're very expensive to curate those, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah. So it was cool. It was cool. I liked how they did that with the last series as well with Boba Fett. All the sets that they do for Disney always look awesome.
Yeah.
They really pay attention to detail with these series that they're doing for Star Wars. So it's cool to see them, really put some time and effort into actually throwing in those little things for callbacks.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty cool that even like going from the series, the trilogy, which I mean wasn't really a fan favorite amongst a lot of people.
Yeah,
they did end up coming back to the roots and showing like actual fandom users, seeing, for instance, like seeing, the monkey lizards, or bringing back actual Mon Calamari and actually representing sounds and soundscapes from the original trilogy that they enhanced, and you could see it and hear it. I mean, it's definitely more refreshing that they're doing it that way versus kind of losing their way into like a more serious set. I think this has both serious and whimsical, which is Star Wars.
Yeah, I agree. And then who does he end up meeting here as well? Who is the pretty much like the mayor or the?
Yeah, that's you're talking about the Grief Karga. It's pretty cool though. Like before he sees Grief Karga, he's the statue of IG-11's there. Yeah, and you kind of already know that that's like a focal point of this episode. He's there for a reason. He's trying to come back and claim IG-11 so that he can go to Mandalore and send the droid out so that he can probably, I'm guessing, test for toxic poisons and basically see if he could get into those mines. And it's great. It's just a great all around tie together how it went from you got attached to this droid in the original series, and then it turns into they're going to bring him back, and he's going to be fighting alongside Din Djarin.
Yeah. So he ends up meeting Grief Karga there, and he ends up pretty much trying to get him to stay as well.
Yeah.
So I actually like that. He needed somebody there. He wanted to try to keep him there because they don't have they don't have anybody there that's kind of the sheriff. Is that what it was called?
Yeah, he wanted a marshal. He wanted a marshal. For Navarro, at least his part of Navarro. He wanted to keep expanding because they're making so much money by mining asteroids, I believe, or mining asteroid belts. Yeah. And he's making hand over fist. I mean, as you can tell, how big the city has grown and how, I mean, literally has droids walking his cape. I mean, that part
was awesome. Probably one of my favorite parts of the episode.
Like,
because I didn't notice them at first. Like, I didn't notice them until a little bit later.
Yeah.
And then once you notice that they're literally just holding it up so it doesn't drag on the ground, that's just about as baller of a move
I know.
you're gonna get.
I know. And then they're walking him back, and the cloak is so heavy that, or does he not want it to touch and get dirty?
Yeah, that would be my guess.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So it was cool. The other thing I liked was when we saw Grogu in the like in his office, how you were saying like, he was spinning on the chair, he
Yeah.
was using the force.
Yeah.
He was able to pick up the candy
Yeah.
and bring that to him as well,
Yeah.
which also calls to, he has been with Luke for 2 years at this time. So it doesn't really feel like it because we're just picking up and watching from there, but it really does show you that he does have a little bit more control over it.
Yeah.
And he,
He's not as weak by using
yep,
it. Yeah.
yeah, and he doesn't get as tired when he uses it.
Yeah.
So those two kind of things were little small details that I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
And then, the next part that we end up having up is he gets called out because there's pirates, which another reason this is
Yeah.
becoming a successful area. So
Yeah.
you're going to draw in more, kind of attention like that. So
Yep.
we end up having the pirates that show up, and they wanted drinks at that bar because they feel like, I guess he feels like they took their, I would say, I guess they took their treasure in a way.
Well, so I guess he kind of worked with, the main Gorian Shard, pirate, like the captain,
Yeah.
Gorian Shard. And I guess at some point he had split riches with him where he had taken his portion and, I guess put it into the town. And these guys are coming in, thinking this used to be a bar. I want it to be a bar and trying to be pushy. So it kind of doesn't go well, which I thought that was probably one of my favorite scenes in this, in this, because it kind of it goes back to that Western theme where, the good, bad, and the ugly, like it's just, you could kind of put those together, making it like a space Western. And there's so many cool
like
things.
the pirates looked great again.
Yeah.
Like they even looked great. Because I guess I don't think we've ever seen them before other than in the like the animated series. So I don't think we actually saw them in live action before. So it was pretty cool to actually see their take on it, which again was done beautifully. So it was cool to see that. It also makes you think a little bit like, what did he do to get, his planet where it's at if he's working with pirates? Because whenever you're working with pirates, it usually means shady business.
Yeah, and I believe there was a callback from Moff Gideon in that series where because he calls himself like high, the highest. Like I'm pretty sure he was like dishonored, like he was mocked when Moff Gideon originally saw him. So it's kind of funny, like that now the Mando is seeing like he's not. I guess you can't say doing shady business, but he's
it might not be getting that money too ethically or as ethically as we think they are.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But pretty much at the end of this scene here, we pretty much get a standoff with your like Western feel, like you were saying. They both go for their blasters, and obviously the pirate ends up losing that one. He could have killed him in that instance if he wanted to. He could have shot him, but instead he just shot his hand just to kind of let him know.
And it's kind of funny too, like seeing him get away, like versus like it's kind of like that Westerny vibe, or like they let one of the bad guys get away, and it happens multiple times.
Series, those pirates, I feel like always get away.
They always get away,
and they always get away.
Yep, and that's what happened here too, because even he got away even at the end. I mean, once we get to that scene, I mean, he gets away again.
Now Mando in the process does end up blasting 4 of them. So there were 5 altogether. He ends up taking out 4. And he just looked ready to. Mando, it always looks awesome. He just looked ready to go though. He wasn't messing around. Once they started retreating and they went for their blasters, he just took them all out.
He took the weak way. He took the weak way out. He took the Qualesh out.
Yep.
The main guy that keeps getting away, the Neek, though, I think there was they had some kind of relation to like actual pirates in real life. Somebody put his actual name together, and it was a pirate.
Okay.
So it's kind of cool how they actually even keep it to, little even historical facts.
Yeah. So they will. Spoiler, later on we'll see the pirates again, but in the meantime, like you were saying earlier, they want to use the IG-11 parts, and he wants to try to rebuild it, just so he does, like you were saying, just so he does have somebody to go down to Mandalore for that could help him out down there pretty much and see if it is going to be a safe environment. So they end up going into the room. They end up trying to fix him up. He does end up getting him powered up, But unfortunately, once he does that, he goes back into, I guess you would say, his
his memory,
protocol.
his memory circuits was fried, so
Yeah,
he reverts back to the Imperial, you know, Imperial assassin droid settings, and
yeah.
he goes red, and he's trying to go after Grogu.
Yep, since that
Yep.
was also from season one, episode one, when that's when he was programmed to do that.
Yep.
So they have a funny little moment in there. The one droid ends up pushing over the statue. The head
Yeah.
falls on the droid's head, and that's how
Yep.
that's how he ends up stopping him.
The statue
Uh,
of Grief Karga too.
yeah, and of course he says that's using your head. Little funny little line in there.
Right.
But then after that, who do they end up going to visit again? Just to pretty much that way didn't work, so they had to go to the experts, which were
Yeah, they went to a species that was it's newer to the Star Wars franchise, which was in the last trilogy. They're the Anzellans. They're the little guys like Bobo Frick from the main trilogy, the newest trilogy, and they're the ones that specialize on droids because they're so tiny. They can get close to them. They can see the parts. They're awesome. They're obviously they're adorable. I mean, they're like little tiny men with mustaches. It's great.
And they have their own like little door entrance, which I thought was funny when they first popped out.
Right.
It's like just their own. To them, it's like huge, but it's just funny the space that they do.
Yeah.
But they end up saying he ends up finding out like you were saying before with the memory circuit that was blown. So he's gonna have to find that. I know at this part when we were watching too, we were talking about how it's awesome how they just this show is so good at keeping you interested, even when it's not like a main plot line that's happening. Like this was such a fun episode, even though it wasn't there was nothing crazy going on, but it was like you were talking about before with the quest, they kind of keep it the fun quest seeking. It's like a video game, like you were saying.
I mean, the best way I can kind of like communicate that too is like it's almost like what you'd feel if you're playing a video game or you're playing something that you're immersed in, or even reading a book. Like you go along for the quest, and that's I think what we're seeing with this series and what Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni and all the producers that are working on it are pushing it to be. It's like a quest. You're getting attached to this quest because you're going from, okay, I gotta fix IG-11. I can't do it myself. I need to get a new memory circuit for him to actually work properly again. So I have to go find it. What's the next episode's going to deal with him finding it? Is he working with Jawa? You don't know where it's going to go. Is he going back to see if Jawas have it? Is he going to go to a space and abandon Imperial? You don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. But I think it's really cool that you're able to actually, be a part of it almost. Like you from the beginning of this episode, a lot of action. You start out with that crazy creature and they're fighting it and they're going crazy, and then it kind of slows down, and then they get into like the Western duel, and then they go back to the little whimsical part of it. I think it just kind of brings together what Star Wars what it really is.
Yeah, and which is great. Like I know this was, I think, either the shortest or the second shortest Mandalorian episode ever. So the fact that you're only getting 33 minutes, which everybody wants the super long episodes. That's what I want. I love when it says like 50 something minutes.
Yeah.
You just know you're gonna get a really good episode.
Yeah.
But they're able to squeeze so much good content in that 32 minutes, where it did fly by, but it was never slow, and they were really able to action pack and make the most of having a shorter episode.
Right. Oh yeah, definitely. It goes to show you that even like keeping it as not, it keeps you engaged instead of just consuming it all at once. I mean, they're doing a good job just even within 30 minutes to keep you engaged.
Yeah, which I will say, this isn't going to be for all series and movies that we do cover. It's not going to be like that for everything. This is just one of those shows that is very, very well written. There's only probably 3 shows that are just really great, and Mandalorian's really like the savior for Disney Plus in general, at least in the Star Wars category. It's kind of what revitalized the rest of the Star Wars content. So It's awesome to see. I know the next part here, the Mandalorian, he was teaching Grogu how to operate the ship.
Yeah.
I know you were making the dad comparison.
Yeah.
There, which is fun moments to see.
Yep. He does a good job. I mean, Pedro Pascal, he does a good job, just being the dad figure and all the roles that he's been playing, and it's great. I mean, it pairs well, especially with Grogu, and he's kind of teaching Grogu, the means of being a pilot, and it's fun. It's just it's whimsical. Like, I don't know, it's for everybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you anybody can watch this and have a good time because they see the baby giggling and having a good time because he's going fast in a Star Cruiser. You know what I mean? It's
I
great.
agree.
Yeah.
I agree. So the next part we have is once he's done showing him that, the pirates do show up.
Yep.
So we have the pirates back. They are not happy that he ended up killing 4 of their guys.
Yeah, the Nikto.
So they get in a little chase, and those are always great scenes too, when you have them in the ships going around the asteroids and flying around. Just how he was able to, as always, maneuver and best the pirates is always fun to watch.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean that scene kind of was like an homage to Jango Fett, when Jango was being chased by the Jedi starfighter, which Obi-Wan was in,
Yeah,
and then it turned on him where he was chasing
What?
him. You know what I mean? Because he was following him. So they're in the asteroid belt, and it's that same type of feel that Favreau grabs, and he does just his version of it. The pirates are racing around in their star chasers, and it's awesome. He's hiding. He's got unbelievable moves when it comes to flying a starship.
Yeah. So they end up tracking him all the way back to the main ship, the main pirate ship, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
That thing was absolutely massive.
Oh yeah.
And we end up meeting, I forget what his name was as well.
Are you talking about the Gorian Shard pirate ship?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, so they end up pulling up. He says pretty much, "You surrender now, and I will spare your life." And
he's like the most classic pirate. You know what I mean? Like Pirates of the Caribbean. If he was a squid or an octopus, I wouldn't have been surprised.
On him.
Yeah, right.
But he ends up saying never trust a pirate, and he just ends up taking off. They don't end up hitting him in the process. But it's kind of funny, even in the animated series as well. It's always the same thing. The pirates will always pretty much screw you over.
Right.
So it's better to
they're just looking to better themselves or take what they can take.
Yep.
Yep.
So where do we end up going from there? We end up landing.
I believe we go to a planet that's very close to Mandalore, where they go to a Mandalorian castle, which is basically run by Bo-Katan. Well, it's not run by. I guess she lives at this castle where she resides here, which was a great vista to see when he's flying in, and you can see that castle. It's definitely Mandalorian architecture when you look at it.
Yeah, it was definitely. You pretty much had one droid and just her there. So I think they were really just trying to show the fact that how fractured that part of like Mandalore is at the moment, or at least their side of things.
Yeah.
There was, just the one droid and just her, and she was sitting alone on her throne, and she pretty much just ended up giving up.
Yeah, I kind of find it funny though, like she has a persona of, you're silly for not taking your helmet off, but she knows that she needed to win in battle to get that sword. And now she's in this kind of dilemma where, she had her beliefs taken from her from a guy that she doesn't think it was worthy of it. You know what I mean?
That's a good point. So she has her own guns that she sticks to as well.
Yeah.
That follows. So she kind of bends the rules, but at the same time, she does have some values that she ends up sticking with.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure. So they end up talking. He ends up learning that, that all her forces ended up leaving her because she doesn't have the blade. She pretty much says, "Hey, you could go gather them all around if you just show them that you have the dark blade." But he's already, he's set on just redeeming himself first. Yep. And she pretty much ends up telling him where the mines are, and then we pretty much end there with
which is kind of, it's even going back to what you said about like earlier in the video when we were talking about like the two factions of Mandalore, Mandalorians, and the Mandalore who leads them, and I kind of find it like there's a power struggle here, obviously, between Bo-Katan and Din Djarin. I think that there's going to be At least I don't know if it's in this series, this one or the next season. They're going to kind of show how, they kind of have to either work together. I mean, may go through like a civil war where they're fighting each other. I'm going to assume this season they will,
I
but
think it
I
has to
want to
be
see that.
'cause-
I want to see when they unite them. I mean, that's going to be cool to see if they
Yeah.
all come together over something. It's got to be over something.
Yeah, I'm with you. Is there anything else that that we didn't discuss that you really enjoyed about it that you could think of? Any like last thoughts for it?
I mean, I really enjoyed. I enjoyed a lot of the creatures that they had just within like a short span of this episode. Just going through Navarro, like seeing all of the cool creatures, the Mon Calamari, even seeing some kind of things that they refreshed from the original trilogy. They refreshed a lot of the audio sequencing, and a lot of the audio things were callbacks, especially to video games I've played in the past. And even hearing those sounds, like the ambient city sounds, they bring me back to my childhood. So it was interesting to see that being done. It almost gave you like that warmth feeling. You know what I mean? Like, oh, this is great.
Yeah. I would say for me, I think just the Mandalorian armor in the beginning when they're all walking out,
Yeah.
just with how unique it all was, because you only get to see the Mandalorian in his armor for the first 2 seasons.
Yeah.
So just to be able to see everybody's like uniqueness and everybody's armor is different, it's just I really enjoy that part because
Yeah.
I've always had a fascination with them. So
I know that nice shiny armor.
yeah, it really looks great. Even the new one that she made for the kid was awesome. So
Yeah. I
if
mean,
you
like
had
you even
to,
look at the
go
armor,
ahead.
like just the armor is armor. Like her helmet is awesome, and
Oh, it's my favorite one.
they kind of even did like if you look back through Favreau's repertoire. I mean, he made Iron Man, right? So like
Yep.
the armor, that scene is like mirrored to the scenes when she's hitting that metal. Iron Man was hitting his metal to build his suit. So
Yeah.
like, there's a lot of cool little things that you pick up on, even with like Grief Karga. Like like you look at Carl Weathers' figure, like there's a lot of stuff that you could pick up on that were from his movies that he kind of called back to, like the Arnold scene where he's like grabbing his hand in the Predator, and then there's just a lot of stuff that he does that you have to think about later down the road, and it's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, well, that will wrap this one up. So if you had to give it a grade from 0 to 10, no decimals or anything,
Yeah.
10 being the best, best episode out of the series and 0 being the worst, where do you think you would rate this one?
I would rate it pretty high. I'd probably rate this an 8. I'm not going to go full 10 because, I mean, there's probably a lot left. I'd rate it an 8 just because, like, even the first season to the second season, like, there's really great parts, but I'd rate it an 8 just because it had a lot going for it for an opener.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would say 7 or 8. I'll go 8 with you, strictly because it really only problem was it was short, and obviously it's the first one of the season, so they're just trying to set up a lot. But I was really impressed with how interesting and how good it was for only being episode 1.
Right.
So I'm right there with you with an 8 as well.
Yep.
So for season 3, episode 1, we both rated it an 8 for our think score.
Heck yeah.
So I think that wraps about everything up. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next week for the next one. Thank you.